you ever been in a spot where, and maybe experienced a moment where you were absolutely convinced that it was over? Anyone here today, there was a moment in your life where you just thought, there's no getting past this moment. There's no coming back from this humiliation. There's no fixing whatever was broken. There's just no way I'm going to come back from this. I actually got on a Reddit thread, and I started looking at different stories of people who thought it was over, and they realized they had missed out because it wasn't actually over. There's actually a whole string of stories, really, honestly, confessions of people who went to these really big games, like sporting events, and they left the game early just to realize that they had missed something really important. And it was actually really fun to read through these stories for a few moments. And one of the stories I'll share with you. So there's this family from Boise, Idaho, and they are big fans of Boise State. They apparently have a college football team, and their team in 2007 was really good, and they made it to a really big bowl game called the Fiesta Bowl, where they were going up against this superpower Oklahoma Sooner team led by Bob Stoops. It was David versus Goliath sort of bowl game. No one gave Boise State a shot, but the dad had his whole family road trip down to Arizona and bought expensive tickets for this bowl game to have this great experience. And they realized near the end of the fourth quarter, there's like a minute left, there was no hope for winning. And so here was the story that was on Reddit. The Sun writes, "With a minute left, my dad says to our family, 'Let's go, the game's over, gotta beat the traffic.'" That's probably how you feel near the end of this service. Time to go. I'm just saying, don't leave early. So we walk out of the stadium, he says, and just as we exit, we hear the crowd explode. It was this legendary trick play that tied the game with 7 seconds left, called a hook and ladder. And that play never works, and it worked. And we had just exited the stadium, and security wouldn't allow us back in when we heard the explosion. And so not only did we miss the greatest play, but we also missed overtime. And at overtime, they did another trick play that was called the Statue of Liberty, and they ended up winning the game. They scored the touchdown in the end zone that we were seated in, and not only that, but the guy who scored the touchdown proposed to his girlfriend right there in the end zone. We missed it all. The guy jokingly writes at the end of the post, "I'll never forget what Dad did to our family that day." And I remind him every year since. It was just one confession after the next of people who couldn't believe they left early, thinking that it was over. I love the great theologian, the legendary Yankee, Yogi Berra. He once said it best: "It ain't over until it's over." Some of us need to hear that today. To not leave the game early, to understand that it ain't over until it's over. Some of you came in today thinking it was over. Maybe you have a marriage that is on life support, and you're thinking it's all but over. Maybe you have had a relationship that you've had for decades in your life, and you think, "Oh, well, what now? It feels over." Or maybe you've just had so many mistakes in your past that you just don't know how you'll ever overcome those mistakes, and you just think, "Well, it must be over for me. There's no way I'm going to be able to reconcile with my kids. No way I'm going to be able to reconcile with my family. No way I'm going to be able to restore this relationship because of everything that I've done. It's over." Maybe some of you come into the room today, and there was a dream in your heart, and you had this dream, and you've dreamt it for a long time, and it's ended, and now you think it might be over for you. I know what it's like to feel like things are over. I know the despair that comes with that. I know the discouragement that can come with that. I know the pain that can come with that. And at the same time, as I look back on those moments where I thought there's no hope, there's no way forward, there's no coming back from this, I've also seen and played witness to the reality that just when I thought it was over, God was just getting started in my life. Just when I was at the bottom, that was when God was pulling me up. And I just want you to know today, some of you need to hear this, whether you're here or in the next room over, that if you have breath still in your lungs, it is not over, because if the tomb is empty, it's not over. If it wasn't over for Jesus, it's not over for you today. Because this Jesus that we celebrate today, he's the one who brings dead things to life. He's the one who turns graves into gardens. He's the one who can bring beauty out of ashes. Do we believe that today, church? And look, if you don't, that's okay. We're going to walk through it today. We're going to go back to that first Easter story. We're actually starting a series today called It's Not Over. We're going to be walking through the Gospel of John for the next 8 weeks. And over this time, we're going to look at the 8 key miracles of Jesus that proves that he is who he says he is. And we're going to find these people, these encounters where they thought it was hopeless, they thought it was over, they thought there's no possible way until Jesus steps in. He's sort of in the business of miracles, resurrections. And I've actually seen it play out in so many lives in this room. Marriages that thought they were over and been restored, or people who thought their story was done and it's been reclaimed. Resurrection stories all throughout the room today. But today we come to a big question. I mean, it's one thing for Jesus to step into other people's miracles, but what happens when the miracle worker himself is at his own funeral? What happens when the one who raises the dead is in a tomb? Because typically what dies stays dead. That is until you get to John chapter 20. If you have a copy of the scriptures, that's our text for Easter this Sunday. Before we jump into John 20, just to feel the weight of it, Friday, Jesus was arrested, beaten, mocked, humiliated, tortured, nailed to a cross, died. His lifeless body was taken off the cross, wrapped in burial cloths, placed into a borrowed tomb. A stone had been rolled over it to seal the tomb. Roman guards there to stand as coverage so that no one could mess with the tomb. In other words, it was over, and everything that could be done had been done to make sure it was over. And yet, John 20 tells a story of the resurrected Jesus interacting with a woman named Mary Magdalene, the first to encounter Jesus. And this Easter, as we talk about this encounter, I want us to consider, just when we think it's over, Easter reminds us of some really important realities. So let's dive in and learn what Easter teaches us when we think it's over. John chapter 20, verse 1. The gospel writer John records this. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb. Now, this is a pretty brave moment if you think about it. The disciples, where are they? They are scared and they're in hiding. They just saw their leader get murdered, and they think if they get found out that they had any association, that they'd get murdered, that they'd suffer the same fate as well, so they're in hiding. And yet it's a woman who comes to the tomb. Brave. It's a brave moment for Mary Magdalene, and I imagine it's also an incredibly difficult moment. This is a moment where she's not coming that first Easter morning thinking, oh, Easter morning, Jesus is alive. No, we're actually told that she came in the morning with spices. She's preparing his body for burial. We're told this little note here in verse 1 that she came while it was still dark. And I know that meant that the outside, the sun hadn't risen yet, and so it was still dark. But I think beyond a physical description, I also believe that this was emotional and spiritual. That this was just an incredibly dark moment. She's experiencing despair. She's experiencing disillusionment, disorientation, because she thinks it's over. She's expecting to see the dead body of Jesus behind the tomb, and so she is overwhelmed with discouragement, and I imagine she is familiar with all of those feelings before. And the reason we can know that is back in Luke chapter 8. Now, we don't know a ton about Mary Magdalene, who this woman was, but we do know a couple of things. One thing is in Luke chapter 8, Mary Magdalene is described to have been tormented by 7 demons. Now, I'm not sure what that looked like. But what I can imagine is that is a dark place to be in, to live in every day. I imagine that that is an overwhelming position to be in. I imagine it's an incredibly hard and lonely position to be in. As a matter of fact, in other descriptions of people that had that same torment in the scriptures, they'd be described as people who had to live on the outskirts of society. They wouldn't be included in the community. They were on the outside of community. So this is someone who is lonely, no family, no friends, no thought that tomorrow was going to be any different than today. If this was a woman that you saw in downtown Tampa, you would say, you'd shield your kids. You would, don't look over in that direction. You don't want to make eye contact with that sort of person. That was her existence. That is until Jesus meets her and calls her name Mary. And at that moment, she's freed. She's restored, she's healed, and she becomes a follower of Jesus. She's a part of this early movement, these early followers of Jesus. And so she then sees Jesus be Jesus and teach like no one's ever taught and do these miracles of healing the sick and raising the dead and turning water into wine and feeding thousands on just a couple of fish and loaves of bread. And she's seen it all. And then she sees just a few days before this Sunday, she sees her Jesus die on a cross and his lifeless body come down and then placed in a tomb. She has seen it all. And so she's not expecting to see life. She is discouraged. She's in despair like she's felt before. This darkness, her hope is gone. And then she sees something she didn't expect to see. It says, continued on in verse 1, that she saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. The stone was rolled away. Her first thought is not resurrection, it's that someone has taken Jesus. We're told in verse 2 that she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one that Jesus loved. Now that, by the way, is the writer of John. That is John who's describing himself. He just is like, and the other guy, the one that, Jesus really loved. So she comes to Simon, Peter, and to John. And I imagine she's out of breath, and she says this, they've taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they put him. And so Peter and John, the other disciple who Jesus really loves, they take off running. And I love that verse 4 is in the Bible for whatever reason. Both were running. But the other disciple, the one Jesus really loves, well, he outran Peter and got to the tomb first. Why is that in there? Though. The kids would say, Peter got cooked. Right? And this is forever in the Bible now for us to, I'm sure they've had conversations. He gets to the tomb first, it says, and John looks in. And then Peter comes behind John, like way behind John. But Peter, he's pretty bold. He goes straight into the tomb. And he sees what John has seen, and he sees what Mary Magdalene has seen, and he sees that it's an empty tomb, and that the linen cloth, the burial cloth, has been folded, and the face cloth has been folded. Jesus was tidy. Kids, make your bed. And it says that he and John believed. But then in verse 9 it says, but they didn't understand. I mean, who would, right? And then verse 10, it says that they went back to where they were staying. So capture this moment. They saw the evidence of an empty tomb. They did not understand, and they decide to go home. They in a way, they left the game early. It didn't compute for them. They didn't realize that Jesus was already at work. They didn't realize that the miracle program of resurrection has already begun. It's already launched. They didn't understand it. And here's what this teaches me for Easter. Here's what Easter reminds us, that when you think it's over, hold on to this. This might be just for some of you today. But when you think it's over, Easter teaches us that Jesus is already at work. Just when you thought it was over, Jesus was already working. They thought this thing was over. They didn't realize it. They didn't understand it. But Jesus was already on the move. Jesus was already raised. Before they even got to an empty tomb, Jesus was out. Before Mary got there, Jesus was out. He was alive. The miracle had already begun. And here they are, face to face with the miracle. They are standing in the middle of the miracle, and they're still not understanding. And here's what this is teaching me personally, is that there could be moments right now where we're thinking it's all over, but what if Jesus has already started doing the miracle in your life? Think about it. You're thinking, the relationship is over. We've crossed the line. It's all done. There's no going back to this. And Jesus is like, no, I'm actually already at work. The fact that you're here today is me already at work. Some of you, you're struggling with an addiction. You thought it was gone, and now it's come back. It's even worse, and you don't want to tell anyone, and you're just thinking, it's all over for me. I thought it was done with this, and now it's back. But the fact that you're here, the fact that you're fighting, the fact that you're willing to confess it and ask for help and say, I need a Savior, the miracle is already underway. It's already happening. You can be standing in the middle of it and not even recognize it, not even comprehend it, just like Peter and John were standing in the middle of the miracle and they couldn't even see it, recognize it, comprehend it. Guys, you might be in the miracle right now. Hold out hope. Just when you think it's over, Jesus, trust this, that he's already at work. Second thing we see in this text is that Jesus is actually closer than you think in this moment. Some of you feel like Jesus is really far away from you right now. And Mary gets that. I want you to continue on in this story. Verse 11, Peter and John, they left the game early. Mary stays. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is just stay, even if it's just with like an ounce of faith, to not give up hope. Let's read verse 11. We're told that Mary stood outside the tomb crying. Now that word for crying, it's not like a quiet single tear down her cheek. This is a Greek word that means weeping out loud. This is a woman that is sobbing. She has seen Jesus die. Her hope has died with Jesus. She thinks Jesus' body has been taken away. She feels like everything's been taken away. And we're told as she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. And they asked her, hey, woman, why are you crying? They've taken away my Lord, she said, and I don't know where they've put him. And at this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. But she didn't realize that it was Jesus. By the way, these are the little details in the scriptures that help me actually believe that this was real. There might be skeptics in the room, doubters. We welcome you. But some of us, we kind of read about the resurrection or hear about the resurrection and we think, oh, this is a fairy tale. this is a legend, but if this were a fairy tale or a legend, it would play out a lot differently. Like the disciples would have shown up to the empty tomb and they would have immediately known, Jesus, he's alive! And they would have celebrated and gone back to the town and celebrated with everybody because Jesus was alive even though they hadn't seen it yet. And Mary, in this moment in the garden, she would have turned and there's Jesus and his cape is flowing in the wind and his beautiful hair, and it's like, Jesus! He's like, here I am Jesus. That's stuff of legend. That's stuff of fairy tale. This isn't a fairy tale. This is real. It was more believable to Mary Magdalene that Jesus' body was stolen, that he had raised from the grave. But how do you miss Jesus standing right in front of you? Honestly, I believe this is one of the more believable moments in the story. Because if you've ever walked through loss, and some of you are walking through that today, if you've ever walked through pain, if you've ever walked through grief, it is sometimes hard to see God in the middle of grief. It can be really hard to see God in the pain. It can be really hard to see God when all you see in front of you is the problem. Like, it's hard to see God through your tears. It's hard to see anything through your tears. And she's been sobbing, she's been grieving, and it's hard to recognize that he's right there with her. And some of you today, you've come into this room and all you can see in front of you is the problem. All you can see is the diagnosis. All you can see is the pain. All you can see is the sin. All you can do is see your shame. All you can do is see all the mistakes you've made in the past. Or all you can do is see the betrayal. And that's all you see. It's clouding everything beyond it. And when everything's up close to you, it makes God feel really far away from you. But what this is teaching us, what Easter's reminding us, is just when we think it's over and the problem is too big, Jesus is actually closer than we think. He's in the garden with her. And you know what? He's in the garden with you. Even when you can't see beyond it, he's there. And it's what King David writes about in Psalm 23, one of our favorite psalms, where he says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for my God is with me. His rod and staff, they comfort me. He's with us in the valleys. He's with us in the pain. He's with us in the darkness. He's been with you your whole life. He's been with you in the betrayal. He's been with you in the divorce. He's been with you in the hurt. He's been with you in the pain. He's been with you in the loss. He's not just with you on the mountaintop of celebration. He's with you in the graveyard of grief. He is with you. He is closer than you think. Church, Jesus is not just at work in our lives, but he's with us. May this be a reminder to you today. And then he's gentle with Mary. I want you to see verse 15. It's quite beautiful, actually, how he treats her. He just asks her questions. He wants to get close to her. Woman, why are you crying? Who is it that you're looking for? He's not overwhelming her. He's not accusing her. He's like, how can you miss it? I'm right here. He doesn't do that. Thinking he was the gardener, she said, Sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you've put him and I will get him. She's desperate. There's no category in her human mind that would ever think that he is a resurrected Jesus, this person. Even though Jesus has told her multiple times and told his disciples multiple times, I'm the resurrection and the life. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He promised that they're going to destroy this body. In 3 days, I'm going to rebuild it. 3 days, I'm coming back. He promises in John 16, hey, there's going to be sorrow, but I promise you will have joy. It will turn to joy. He's promised all of these things. He predicted his own death and said 3 days later, I'm coming back. And yet none of that registered until verse 16, where everything changed. Jesus says to her, something about the tone and the texture of his voice, the way he says her name. I've heard that voice before. I know that's the voice that freed me from torment. That's the voice that healed me. That's the same voice that restored my life. That's the voice that's been speaking love and dignity into me. That's the same voice that healed all those sick people. That's the same voice that calmed storms. That's the same voice that raised the dead. That's the same voice that fed thousands. That's the same voice that taught like no one's ever taught before. That's the same that's Jesus. And she realizes it, and the Bible says she turns towards him and cries out in Aramaic, Rabboni. And in a moment, all of her confusion became clarity. All of her grief, just like Jesus promised, became joy. It changed her whole life because in that moment, she realized that Jesus really is alive, that the tomb isn't the end, that death isn't final, that the cross wasn't defeat. The resurrection means that Jesus really is who he says he is, that all of his promises that he made are actually true. That means that our sins can really be forgiven and that we can have life right here and right now and for all eternity. He's alive. He's alive. He's alive. But I want you to see how it all changed for her. It changed for her when it got personal. Do you see that? When Jesus called her name. You see, some of us, a lot of us, can come to church. We can celebrate the resurrection as an event. But if we celebrate the resurrection just as an event, that's something that you can hold at arm's length. This was not an event for Mary. This was an encounter. And when the resurrection becomes an encounter with your Savior, that's when it will change your life. You see, Jesus, he's never been just about a religion for you. He's been about an encounter, a relationship with you. He wants it to become personal for you. That's when it will change your life. That's when it changed her life. That's when it's changed my life. When he called my name. And you might be sitting here skeptical or questioning or thinking about this and maybe saying to yourself, well, yeah, I mean, if the resurrected Jesus came to me and called my name, yeah, I'd probably believe. I'd say, yeah, I'll give my life over to Jesus. But what if the resurrected Jesus has been calling your name? You just haven't been listening. See, I believe that Jesus, he speaks all the time. Actually, one of the first things we learn about when you open the Bible, page one thing about the nature of God is that he is a speaking God. Genesis 1, God spoke the world into existence. He speaks. The Bible says in Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. Like even all of creation speaks to us. So every day we are getting a message from God. He's calling our name. He calls my name. Now, I've heard him call my name. Now, you might be thinking, really? You've heard God's voice in your life? I hear it all the time. Now, not the way you might be assuming. I have not heard like the Morgan Freeman voice come from heaven, which that would be cool. I'd be open to it. Daniel, good morning. Like I've not heard an audible voice of God. Some of you may have. That's not been my experience. But I have heard Jesus call my name so many times. Every time that I've been down and out and I get a phone call from a friend who for whatever reason was stirred to give me a call in that moment, just to say, hey, love you, bro, how you doing? That was God calling my name. Every time I've been sustained and provided for, every good and perfect gift comes from the Father above. That is, hey, Daniel, I'm here to provide for you. You don't have to worry. He's calling my name. Every time I look at my children, my wife, the grace he's had on me. invited to church at 21 years old, and I thought, man, if I ever walked back into a church, a lightning bolt would come and take me out. He was calling my name through an invitation to say, hey, I love you. I'm chasing you down. I'm here with you. You can still be forgiven. Even at the very bottom of my life, when I was chasing all the wrong things in all the wrong directions, Jesus was calling my name. He was saying, hey, Daniel, there's more for, I'll let you choose this, but man, there is more for you. And in my dissatisfaction, he was calling my name. And maybe the fact that you're here today is proof that there is a resurrected Jesus calling your name, wanting to get your attention, wanting his voice to rise above all the other voices in your life saying, hey, I'm here, I love you, I'm here for you, I came to save you, come and have life with me. The question is not, does God speak? It is, are we listening to his voice? God's been calling our names all along. That's when it changes us. When resurrection stops becoming an event and it actually becomes an encounter. People to this very day have been having these encounters where it gets personal. And I want to show you one of those stories today.
My name's Kristen. I am the mother to 3 beautiful children. And my story is basically that I was raised by a single mom who was everything to my brother and I. My dad was not really in our life much. She was my rock. She was my everything. She was there for every moment, never missed a swim meet, never missed a theater production, never missed anything. But the one thing that she couldn't do was be my dad. So growing up without a dad, it left a hole. I tried through a series of relationships to fill. I knew the Lord. We went to church, did the young life thing, got married kind of young in my 20s. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. And then I just kind of went from relationship to relationship, always hoping that I would find this self-worth and acceptance, but it was always based on a man. It was always based on the man in my life and what he said of me, whether he accepted me or rejected me. And it was never my own. I never had my own self-worth and didn't realize my own value until one night, in a very difficult season of a rather difficult marriage, I found myself on the bathroom floor, completely undone, listening to worship, which was starting to become a lifeline for me. It was a big part of my life. I was actually on a worship team at the time, but it was still like a corporate thing, right? We did it at church. It had just started becoming personal, and Jireh was like my anthem at that time. And I played the song Jireh in the bathroom on repeat as I'm just like a complete mess on the floor after a really difficult argument, and some words that had been spoken that left me feeling completely unworthy and unloved. But this song, for some reason, that day, as it just filled the room, something broke. And it was as if that codependency that I had been living my whole life under was like vanished. And I realized the words of the song, "You are enough," and that I was already chosen, and that I was already loved. And for me, like, that was the beginning of something new in me and something new with the Lord. And all of a sudden, it didn't matter as much what he had to say, or what really anybody had to say about my worth or my value or my lovability or my, am I worth staying with, any of that stuff. The things that were, maybe said about my kids too. Like, it didn't carry the weight anymore because I knew who the Lord said that I was, and I knew who the Lord said that my kids were. So I started a prayer closet at that time, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna change everything in this war room, right? Emptied out half my closet. I had verses all over the wall, wrote prayers up on the wall, and I was really warring for my marriage. Unfortunately, that did not work out. That's not what the Lord had. for me. But what was interesting is that I didn't really know what was going to be on the other side of that if it didn't work out. And now I realize he was with me through all of it. And I was walking in this really unique season where I'm in my car every morning, starting off my morning before dawn with worship and then prayer and then, hey, Lord, would you meet me in your word? And every time I would just flip open my Bible and it was like, oh, you... That's exactly what I was praying about. That's exactly what I was just crying about, you know? And then came the news of the tumor. In the beginning part of the year, something was going on with my vision in my right eye. I've never worn glasses, never even seen an eye doctor. So I'm like, oh, that's weird, you know? I'm just getting older, right? And then I ended up going to an eye doctor. She sent me to a neuro-ophthalmologist because she couldn't find anything really wrong with the vision itself. Did a battery of tests with him, and he also couldn't find anything really wrong with the vision. So he says, we want to do an MRI of your brain. So I go in, and he didn't waste any time and said that they found a large, really large mass on my brain. Surprisingly, I didn't hit the floor. He did right away tell me that it's what they thought it was and that it was typically benign, so that was comforting. And he said, you know, the next step is to meet with a neurosurgeon and find out if this is surgery or radiation. But I'll tell you, I still, like, even in that moment, I had peace. I even remember telling my doctor before I left the office, I said, well, God will get the glory for this. And he's like, okay, you know, I don't know what his beliefs are, but he went with it. So I came home, told them, and he walked me through all of it. There was moments when I was afraid, but they were met immediately with peace. I remember the night before surgery. It was like the closest I've ever felt to Jesus in the garden. I remember hitting my knees in my dining room and just praying that, Lord, if this cup could be passed, like if you could take this from me, please, you know. But I remembered the words of our Savior, and I said, but not my will, yours. Your will be done. I thought my story was going to be over if that marriage didn't work out. I thought my story was going to be over if that surgery didn't work out, right? But my story is still being written. That's the most exciting part, is to know that I'm in the hands of the Father. He authors my steps. So I can't wait to see what he does, because this is just the beginning.
Can we celebrate that today? Just when you think it's over, Jesus is already at work. He's closer than you think. He's calling your name. He wants it to be personal. He's just getting started. I think what I love about that story is following Jesus doesn't necessarily mean he's going to change all of our circumstances around us. That's not the promise, but he does change us. It's not over. If it's not over for Jesus, it's not over for us. And when Mary saw Jesus, she tried to hold him, cling to him, and Jesus says, don't cling to me. Not trying to push her away, but he's wanting to send her forward. He says, go tell my brothers that I'm ascending to the Father and to your Father, to my God and to your God. And so she runs. This time, though, for a new purpose. And she carries the greatest news on the planet to these scared men in a room. She says, I have seen the Lord. That really is the grace of Jesus, isn't it? That the whole movement of Christianity was on Mary Magdalene to carry. Not perfect. For so many years of her life, an outsider, outcast, marginalized, no family, no hope. She was a person in need. and allow Jesus to meet her in that need. And that really is what Christianity is. It's not about earning or deserving or being perfect or going to church or trying harder. It's about admitting that you have need and in letting Jesus meet you with his grace in that need. To say, I love you, I love you, I love you. And let him save you. That's what saving is. And here's what's really amazing is that when we invite Jesus in, the Bible says, same power that raised Jesus from the dead is now alive in us. You know what that means? Here's the greatest news. Is that means that sin does not have the final say on your life. Death does not have the final say on your life. The mistakes you've made in the past does not have the final say on your life. You know what has the final say on your life? Jesus has the final say. You know what has the final say? Resurrection has the final say on your life. And so you can live a whole new life right here, right now, for all eternity. It's not over.